Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Philippine panel talk for tonight. I'd like to introduce myself. I am Nandi Dela Paz, and I am the research director for Aciiid. And just to introduce to you Aciiid, Aciiid is an interdisciplinary research and development trend platform that positively contaminates the minds of people, changing their perception and design through the method of curated research and inspiration. Originated from the Philippines, Italy, and Dominican Republic, Aciiid is established to educate and spread awareness about contemporary trends in the design world. By featuring current news, events, people, and innovations on design in a global scale, we aim to provide a digital platform for informative, inspiring, influential, and indulgent content for designers and design enthusiasts. Through this platform, our main pursuit is to elevate the understanding and perception of design values within an inclusive community where sharing of knowledge and inspirations become the new normal. Now, what are we celebrating this week? This week is actually VDW, and VDW stands for Virtual Design Week. The need to keep our distance from each other has actually forced a radical shift in preferences in all levels, in the way we consume, the way we make things, and the way we relate with one another. The reflexive response has been an incline towards virtual practices. The more time and resources we spend in and on virtual spaces, the more powerfully they shape our lives, and the more important it becomes to reflect on how we might engage in virtual practices moving forward. As we understand it, virtual design is any object, space, apparel, game, media, or experience made in the digital space for the digital space. As we build a more robust understanding of what it means, might we also ask ourselves, where are we going with it? Where do we want to go? And how do we get there? In line with some of the most pressing issues our society faces today, Aciiid invites you to reflect on virtual design with us through the lenses of sustainability. Center. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. It happens, but we have to adjust to it. So I'd now like to remind everyone that while the presentation is going on, you may type in, and we'd like to encourage you to type in your questions. And later on, we will filter your questions so we can include them during the question and answer portion. We have allotted time for that later on. I'd now like to move on to our first panelist. Our first panelist for this particular talk is an assistant professor and researcher at the College of Fine Arts and Design and at the Research Center for Culture, Arts, and Humanities of the University of Santo Tomas. She took her Doctor of Philosophy in Philippine Studies and actually just finished recently at the University of the Philippines, Diliman, with her dissertation entitled Discarte, Understanding Design Culture through the Chairs of the Filipino Design Exemplars. She also finished her Master in Business Administration, graduating magna cum laude, with her thesis entitled A Methodology for the Adoption of the Quality Function Deployment in Selected Footwear Manufacturers in Metro Manila. And she took her Bachelor of Fine Arts in Industrial Design from the University of Santo Tomas, where she is currently affiliated with. She had also worked as a product designer and design consultant to medium to large scale export producers until the year 1993. Currently, she is the president and founding member of the upcoming Association of Industrial Designers, the IDSP, or Industrial Design Society of the Philippines, established in 2019. She has also received several national and international grants, such as the Creative Grant of the CHED NCCA, or the Commission of Higher Education, and the National Commission for the Culture and the Arts, which is the Salika for 2018 to 2020. She also has received participation grants from the Cumulus, an international association of universities and colleges in arts, design, and media, where she is actively a member of. And she also has received the APO, or the Asia Productivity Organization grant in 2004. And she has also received research grants from the Spanish Program for Cultural Cooperation in 2007 and in 2008. And join me in welcoming our first panelist for tonight to speak on virtual design cultures across Southeast Asia. I'd like to welcome now our first panelist, and you may now turn on your video and your audio, Gemma Mendoza.
Thank you, Nan, for the nice introduction. Okay. Okay. Okay, so, okay, the video is on. So the title of my talk is Virtual Design Cultures Across Southeast Asia. We need to strengthen the humanistic perspective as we migrate to the virtual earth in order to understand what are the real opportunities and threats are as we shift our daily to the digital platform. Increasingly, in interactive art, animation, and graphic visual, computer-mediated reality, and gamification, the creative community from the Southeast Asia are contributing more and more to the mainstream of the contemporary and popular cultures, enriching the corpus of Asian art. Not anymore the exotic outside the Western world, but the global and commercial, with a hint of Asian and indigenous. The meta question is the design culture from this region of Asia the third space, the in-between of the Oriental and the Western art? I refer to the third space as the field of the genuine but not exotic cultural space of Homi Bhabha. The third space is a legitimate space, creative space of an international culture that, despite having a cultural, a colonial and post-colonial provenance, is comfortable with cultural differences to elude the polarity of politics and move towards this idea of inclusivity. This third space is where I posit the resonance of Philippine design culture across Southeast Asia. Design culture describes all aspects of design, the methods, sets of values, habits, and related concepts. These are the underpinnings of design theories and practices that reflects our values and who we are. Why is this important? In the virtual earth, geographical boundaries will be inconsequential as long as internet connectivity is available. This era of the fourth industrial revolution is diluting cultural boundaries. The ease of travel and human mobility in the pre-COVID days, for example, has not really stopped. We are witnessing the Internet of Things in all aspects of daily life, and it is disrupting that the need to strengthen our groundings before we get lost in the vortex of the fluid and the virtual communities. It is more pronounced. The salient of this point is to know who we are. What is our design culture, for example? This is a reflexive mindset, which will help us to navigate the next normal by appreciating the extent of our capabilities from the examples of the past. We come together in this talk to bring our insights and perspectives as members of the academe and creative community. I want to underscore the importance of remembering the memory of our cultural roots that buttresses our creative culture. The cultural roots in the concept of habitus or kinaugalian link the design cultures of Southeast Asia. We excavate our pre-colonial origins as inspirations and creative springboards. But are we appropriating them with mindfulness and respect? Allow me to illustrate the different interpretations of the light, airy, and transparent tropical aesthetic in the examples of Filipino chairs. I use a design timeline to indicate a persistent value in the use of natural materials and in the incorporation of solihiya, the open basket weave. In the emerging phase of the Filipino design identity, the early 1900s, the chair design by the Atelier Tampinco is there. In the evolving the identity phase, 1910s to 1950s, in the vernacular San Miguel de Mayumo rattan chairs, we see the open and skeletal silhouettes with the solihiya. In the indigenous revivalism and organic phase from the 1970s to the present, this is the modern designs of Buji Layug and Pamintuan, Kenneth Cobanpue, Milio Nabal, and Dembitantes. The light and modern lattices allude to the transparent and the see-through aesthetic. This design culture explains why we also have the calado or the see-through wood carving as architectural and interior element of colonial houses before the advent of air conditioners. The Filipino transparent or translucent style is comparable to the 1940s modern classic minus the florid decoration. The calado or the embroidery technique. This is also the detailed and meticulous technique that again illustrates an Asian value that is of honoring and respecting the status of the wearer or user. Calado in wood carving is done using the ukit, the pre-colonial gouging technique common in Southeast Asia that we see in the incised decorations of pottery, prows of boats, burial jars, and in the metal reliefs or reliefs. In Ilocos Sur, south of the Philippines, the term is burda, and the elaborate version is a bordado. That also refers to a rich embroidery or a pre-colonial warrior. In colloquial terms, bordado may refer to a prison inmate with many tattoos covering his body to show that traditions can degenerate or vanish. How so, we might ask? Because culture evolves as the offshoot of our cultural encounters. Ideas are transposed by human travels and interactions. In the present, it is happening in the virtual spaces. The virtual space is now the melting pot of the fourth industrial revolution, the next normal of doing things, as we see in the ways many young creatives step up to volunteer their talents during the quarantine, using the tools they are most accustomed to. Today's generation of the creatives moves so fast and so effortless, wielding the various software applications. What is amazing is that many of the endeavors, from the conceptual to the actual, are created outside the typical studios. In the nooks of residences, where these creatives are glued to the computers, exchanging ideas with another somewhere in the concrete jungle. The design initiatives are also open sources that show the generosity of the Filipino creativity. For instance, the 3D printing software for the rapid manufacture of face shields and laryngoscopes, and the decontamination chamber, as seen here, that has been deployed across the Philippines and the Middle East. Thank you sa digital technology. Open source designs reflect the Filipino sense of community. This admirable spirit is the same driving force behind the Minecraft version of the University of Santo Tomas campus tour called the Freshman Welcome Walk. So let's see that. Okay. Okay, medyo mabag. Okay. So from the idea of Charles Nobleza and his friend, to its spread by the Twitter platform, the community of contributors is mobilized to complete the project in the shortest time. Okay, so okay, so what we're seeing here is the culture of gamification obviously at work. The speed that the campus tour has been transformed, uh, the tradition into a virtual adventure, recreate the fiesta experience for the incoming freshmen. It also illustrates the undying Filipino hospitality. So that we see the pandemic becoming a window to show the creative talents that inspires and delights. This recalls how design culture evolves through the changing context of artistic production. In the practice of client accommodation, for example, which is a form of a cultural encounter, concepts, ideas transfer from one to another through the commissioned works. Because we want to stand out and be noticed, any window that allows the freedom to extemporize is aimed for to show off the latitude of Asian talents. What is operating is the colloquial discarte or creative ingenuity. Kailangan may diskarte ka, we often say, to mean that one must have a particular way of approaching a challenge or an impressive strategy to win. Because in a competitive market, we know there are other factors like political economy of design. I want to advance Discarte as a positive mindset of being mindful to the customer. Discarte or creative ingenuity has been embedded over time as a part of our bag of tricks, and it speaks of our Filipino hospitality that always seeks to offer a fiesta. It is the resourcefulness when faced with constraint, the inventiveness to create a brilliant solution, or the ability to increase the value of lowly Philippine indigenous materials that are abundant to our locality. Our culture is innovative and intuitive, but is it sustainable? This is the provocation I would like to surface. Philippine design have always been globally focused but have remained Philippine-oriented. The question is, can our cultural competence through design culture bring about genuine progress and sustainable development for the country? What will be our roles and involvement in the virtual earth? Well, we need to tweak our design culture. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gemma. That was a wonderful presentation. I know that we have very limited time for the presentation, but
Yeah.
all our speakers are maximizing the time. Well, I'd now like to request you to turn off your video so that we can proceed to our
Thank
next
you.
speaker, whom I will be introducing now. Our second panelist is a tenured professor at the De La Salle College of St. Benilde. He holds a graduate diploma in interior design from the Queensland University of Technology in Brisbane, Australia, and a master's degree in design and art education from the University of New South Wales, Sydney, Australia. While there, he taught design courses at the UNSW and at the KVB Institute of Technology. Our second panelist, fondly called Gerry, served as Benilde's Dean of the School of Design and Arts from the year 2004 to 2010. And during his tenure, he founded 4 degree programs, namely architecture, photography, animation, and digital film. He was also the director of the Metropolitan Museum of Manila from the years 2011 to 2012. Since 2015, he has been Benilde's director for the Center of Campus Art, or CCA, the office that produces, curates, and manages exhibits for the college with shows that investigate the intersections of design, art, culture, and society. Occasionally, he teaches architectural history and architecture thesis. Currently, he is the principal architect of Gerry Torres Architectural Design, established in 2010. And join me in welcoming our second panelist, architect Gerry Torres.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Nan, for that introduction. So I guess I better go on and start because of the limited time. Okay, I am going to speak on behalf of the De La Salle College of St. Benilde Center for Campus Art, which I have been a professor for the past 20 years, as well as an administrator. My name is Architect Gerry Torres. I'm presently the director and curator of the Center for Campus Art, or the CCA, as how we like to call it. It is a unit that was put up in 2015 to produce, curate, and manage exhibits for the college. Since then, we've produced 17 major shows with themes ranging from design to architecture to cities, people with disabilities, indigenous communities, the environment, and outstanding examples of Philippine art, music, and design through the works of our national artists. This is where we are located. It is the 14-story School of Design and Arts located in the heart of Manila. And the CCA is here in this building, specifically assigned to a 150 square meter gallery, which we are running and which the place where all our major shows are installed. All the shows of the Center for Campus Art are open to the public. This was the show that was installed in our gallery right before the lockdown. I just want to go back a bit. This was opened in January 16 and was supposed to run until April 17. However, the lockdown happened. This is an example of one of our shows on our national artist, and this is on National Artist for Music, Ryan Cayabyab. However, March 10 was the day when everything stopped in the school. And so I just want to share with you how the exhibit is now. It is still there. It just looks like it is frozen in time because we haven't even had the chance to pack it up. Now that's me on the left. Excuse me. On one of my visits to the school to check on the exhibit, and there I am looking very forlorn about what's happening at the moment. However, we have to go on, and this is where my talk will start, because when the lockdown happened, we were already planning our next exhibit, and it was on another national artist, this time for literature, Cirilo Bautista, and the name of the exhibit is the Trilogy of Saint Lazarus, which is the magnum opus of Cirilo Bautista. We were planning to install a physical exhibit, but because of what's happening, we've had to adjust and change our tactic and now migrate to the virtual. I'd like to show you the three posters that we've made with regards to our exhibit. First, the concept of our exhibit is text as image. The artists and students who have been invited to be part of this exhibit were asked to respond to the work of Cirilo Bautista, the poetry in particular, and interpret it through art and design. So in our poster, you can see that here the text as image concept is applied. Now, if you look at the first poster to the leftmost, it has very specific dates: September 17, opening at 6 p.m., and a very specific run until December 19 of 2020. The next poster is a bit more general. We're looking at September 2020 because at this point, this was a month after, we still really didn't know what was going to happen. And then the last poster there to the rightmost says, just opens next at the De La Salle College of St. Benilde, because that is as much as we can predict when it comes to the pandemic. However, I'd like to share with you the submissions of the artists that was connected to the show. How I dealt with the artists as a curator was all online. And I realized that it is possible. There are certain limitations perhaps, but the instructions of turning their art into an interpretation of Cirilo Bautista's poetry through zines was accepted and adopted quite well by the artists. And I think it's credit to artists everywhere that they are one of the most adaptable professions that we can think of. This is another of the artists. The previous one, sorry, is all made by hand. I just want to show you the range of artworks. And this one is quite very digital. Isolatong used the Sims platform, the gaming platform. And Wipo also use a lot of digital technology for the creation of his art. We have two very young artists, Thea Torres and Jackie Cruz, very graphic design in their approach. We have Mark Salvatos and his found objects. This is actually the backside of a photograph. And he's going to exhibit a series of these photos as a way of interpreting memory and also the poetry of Bautista. Juan Cabrera embroidered on flour sacks her impressions of Cirilo Bautista. So we can see here the range of the work that has been submitted to us. Nice Benaventura references the movies through the cinema of Lino Broca and Ishmael Bernal. Christian Tablason with his moody photographs. So I was quite happy with the submissions of the artists because even if we did not have a chance to talk to each other in person, they were able to produce outstanding works in their interpreting their art through interpreting Bautista through their art. I've also included here in the project 10 students and one alumni of Binil. And I just like to say that in the projects of the CCA, in all our exhibits, we always involve our students. I've always believed that the students are one of our most valuable assets in school in terms of creating output and artifacts that could be included in the exhibit. And the Cirilo Bautista exhibit is no exception. I just want to focus on this student on the right. His name is Kevin Nunez because he made all of these wonderful digital portraits of his classmates, which will be included in the show. Now, what were they asked to do? They were asked to create environmental graphics using the words of Cirilo Bautista for an installation that we will call the House of Words. And they were assigned chapters that they then read, and from the chapters selected particular stanzas that resonated with them. And these stanzas were the ones that they turned into environmental graphics, as well as furniture, as in this table by Bea Carrage. Excuse me. Okay, just a short video of how the House of Words will be like as it will be installed in the gallery of the CCA. So as you can see here, it's a structure that is an abstract interpretation of the house of Cirilo Bautista in Quezon City. The students were assigned particular areas in this house, and from with these areas, they selected certain words that will then resonate for them, resonates with them, as well as stanzas that they feel their classmates or the audience of the exhibit should know. Again, you can see here our text as image concept, and they may not have been given a lot of leeway in terms of creativity, but I guess, I think that's also a good exercise in design to have certain parameters. And in this case, there's only one type of font, only three colors, red, blue, and yellow, which we got from an artwork of Cirilo Bautista, but which is coincidentally also the colors of the Philippine flag. The Trilogy of St. Lazarus is an interpretation of the history of the Philippines through the poetry of Cirilo Bautista. That's why we feel that it's very important for our students and community to know about him. Okay, but because we are not able to install anything in the gallery right now, we've migrated to digital platforms, of course, first with Facebook. So all the submissions of our artists are now installed in our FB. So if you can, please follow us in Benil Campus Art FB. We have not yet put up all of the works of the 30 artists and students. We are just halfway through, but we are doing this regularly. Every other day we are posting until the end of September. The other platform that we have is Instagram, of course, and we've also migrated all of the exhibits on our Instagram page. So please, if you can follow as well, you can find all of the works of our artists in our IG. Okay, I'd like to show you the last or the latest poster that we've done. It says here, website launch September 17, 2020. We've realized that we need a website for exclusively devoted for the Trilogy of Saint Lazarus. So we are working on that now, and we hope to share it with everybody by September 17. We also have a dedicated Instagram for the exhibit, which is ongoing now. So if you can follow, that would be great also. I've also learned how to, I've realized that there is an audience out there that needs to be nurtured. And I'm talking about the virtual audience. I must admit that I never really gave attention to the virtual audience outside of our campus. But now I'm realizing that because of what happened, there are people out there who would be potential audiences for the work that we do. And so we've started to, I've started to purchase booths and to work with the managing and the promotions of FB as well as Instagram. I'm learning to do that. I've never learned how to do this, but you know, we have to learn new things in this situation. Another platform that we are working on right now that we want to promote more aggressively is our YouTube channel. All of the videos that we have done for our projects in the past 5 years are all uploaded on our YouTube channel. So please check it out. The latest the output or content that we put up is the Alon documentary, which won 2 awards, which won an award in London, in the London Film Festival. Is about the dangers of plastic waste. And on September 19, we are partnering with the US Embassy Manila and also with SM Malls to again promote this documentary for the Coastal Cleanup Day on September 19. So what I'm just trying to show is that even during the lockdown, the content that we have keeps finding a new audience. And that's a great discovery that we're having right now. We also joined the auction of Leon Gallery, and we auctioned some of the artworks that were left to us by printmakers in connection with our 2018 exhibit called By Hand, Rediscovering the Art of Printmaking. So we've also participated in this online auction. And presently we are doing a project which we call the CCA ebook series on national artists. We've produced an exhibit on national artists for fashion, Ramon Valera, and national artists for cinema, Lino Broca and Ishmael Bernal. And as I mentioned earlier, national artists for music, Ryan Cayabyab. Now, for those people who may not have had the chance to view these exhibits, we are creating an ebook, and we hope to share this with as many people as we can, but specifically to schools, especially to public schools. And it's great that we have these online platforms now, because our dream was always to reach more people, and especially people outside of Manila. And perhaps this is the opportunity for us to do so. We also have another exhibit that's coming up. This was an actual exhibit that we were planning to install. However, we realized that until that happens, we can still have online exhibits. So this one is called the Gallery of LaSallian Directors, which is going to focus on directors who have had a LaSalle education. And so examples here would be Peke Galiaga for Oro Plata Mata, Joey Reyes, Eric Mati, and Gino Santos, who is from Benilde. And so before we install it at the 12th floor of the School of Design and Arts, which is where it's going to be, we are going to install this online. And moving forward, we are still planning our shows for 2021, pandemic or no pandemic, because that has been the practice of the CCA. And we are thinking of moving Cirilo Bautista to January because we're not really, Binil is closed until December and we are only having online classes. But in April of 2021, we hope to put up a collection of the contemporary, which is a collection of international art by a young businessman who has been kind enough to lend this to us. And then we're going to have an exhibit on Daniel Burnham, the architect of Manila, and his plans for the city in 1905. And then the third one, which is probably going to be September 2021, fingers crossed, would be the cinema of Pepe Galiaga, focusing on his mythological stories. And if for people who are not familiar with director Pepe Galiaga, he has made about 15 movies that are focused on the lower mythological creatures of the Philippines, like the Aswang, the Tiyanak, and the Manananggal. I have no exact translation in English of these creatures, but maybe if you send me a message, I can explain that further. So what have I learned in the past few months with what's happening? The gallery is anywhere, and I'm realizing now that I am not limited to the confines of the school because it's the whole world is virtually out there. And Hello World pertains to the audience, the new audience that we'd like to reach, and I'm really looking forward to engaging with them. Content is king. I think everybody here in this panel agrees with me that content is king, no matter how great the platform is. The content is still the most important, and we hope to be able to come out with good content. Jack be nimble, Jack be quick. I had to be both quick and nimble and adapt and change and learn because of what's happened. I think everybody has to do that to survive this and to come out better and stronger. And the last one is, I am a student. We are students. I am a learner. I'm still learning now, and I'm happy to learn because if we look at the good side of the pandemic, there are good sides, and I'm seeing that now. So I'd like to end this talk by saying thank you to Aciiid and for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to share what we're doing in the Center for Campus Art at the De La Salle College of St. Benilde, and also to congratulate you guys for the amazing work that you've been doing the past months. And this is Gerry Torres again for the Center for Campus Art. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sir Gerry. That was long but very full, right? So
was it long? Sorry.
No. I mean, perfectly long. Anyway, we'll hear more from you later when we ask questions. In fact, thank you. In fact, I'd like to remind everyone that you're encouraged to type your questions, or you can give your comments. Just free to type in the chat box, so you can also discover how you can express your reactions to the presentations. At this point, I'd like now to introduce our third panelist. Our third panelist is a freelance character animator, and he's also an animation mentor. Formerly, he was affiliated with Toon City and Toon City Academy. He's worked on TV shows like Big Hero 6, the series, Ogie and the Cockroaches, and Sex Talks with Dr. Holmes. He's one of the creators and animation director of the animated short Billy and Bonnie in All Shapes and Sizes, which won the jury citation and grand prize at Animahinasyon 2019. Currently, he is working on the Lackadaisy film and on Pencilmation animated shorts. Let us all welcome our third panelist, Mookie, Tamara. You may now begin your presentation, Mookie.
Yeah, I'm streaming it now. Can you see it? Right. So
yes,
hi everyone. Thank you for introducing me, Nandi. So hi everyone, I'm Mookie, and I'll be talking about the title is really long, so I shortened it to the important parts: technology and methodologies in the academe. In particular, I'll be talking about the challenges of that I encountered from being a student to transitioning and into working in the academe. So hi again, I'm Mookie. Just a little bit more of a background. I graduated from UP College of Fine Arts. I mostly trained in traditional arts in UP, as well as when transitioning to industry. However, when I started work as a professional, I found myself working 100% on digital. I never went back to traditional, except maybe in fringe cases where I had to like experiment with something different. But now I fully transitioned into digital, and I haven't looked back. I'm also a Creative Innovators Fellow with the British Council, and I'm working on freelance animations as well as mentoring and teaching people privately in animation in particular. So with that out of the way, the first thing that I need to talk about to set the stage for the rest of this is the idea of the trouble between traditional versus digital. Now, a lot of people think that there is this competition between the two where they can't find a space to join together. However, I would say that that's not true. Both are actually very important, and neither one is better than the other. I'll explain why. Let's start with the pros and cons. Let's look at the pros and cons and let's see how they kind of interact. So with traditional, the pros are that the fundamentals are very important, that it's universally accessible because of our shared experience where when we were kids, the first thing we would actually do is draw with crayons and pencils. And it's immediately tangible, meaning that what you see is what you get. When you draw a line, you see a line, you feel the line, you can touch that line, especially if you're doing a 3D medium. Now the cons, however, with traditional medium are that it's very, very expensive to maintain and produce, in particular, space-wise. If you have a gallery, you don't just look at the floor space of the gallery, you look at the back room as well. You have to store so much stock, and if you don't sell that, you're left with so much stock that's unsellable, and you have to get rid of it somehow. Next is that it's very niche professionally, meaning that it's very hard to come by clients who will hire you because of your traditional expertise. There is still a very huge market for stuff like murals and paintings. However, because the demand is not as high as before, you will be competing in a very small space. So despite it being a big market, a relatively big market, you have a lot of competition compared to demand. And last is that it's physically taxing. For example, you have a painting and you want to sell it. You have to move that painting somehow. You have to either commute on the train or on a bus with that painting and then set it up. And if that painting gets damaged, goodbye painting. There's no way to save it except for repair. And that's very taxing because you have to account for that every time you make a physical piece. Now, when it comes to digital, however, there are just as many pros and cons. You might think that digital is much easier, but no. The pros in digital is that it's very competitive. There's a bigger market. It's easier to tap into. Second is there's a wider reach. There's Twitter, there's Instagram, there's Facebook, there's DeviantArt, etc. And you can find clients very easily compared to traditional. Third is that it's cheap. There are cheap, free, and good software that you can download right now. If you always wanted to get into Blender 3D, you can download Blender and get into 3D for free completely. You can also download Krita if you always wanted to get into digital painting or animation, completely free. You just need a computer. Yes, the computer is expensive. However, the software needed is actually very widely accessible. Now, the last, I think most important considering our situation right now is that distance is not a barrier. We don't need to go out to sell our work. Now the cons for digital are that the variety of software can be overwhelming. I, as an animator, have to learn at least 5 different software just so that I can kind of tap into that market anytime I need to. Next is that technology advances very, very quickly. 5 years ago, what was super advanced now is commonplace, and you can't take that time back. If you haven't learned it, you're behind. And last con is that it's very expensive to start. I mentioned before that there are very cheap free and good software. However, the hardware is very expensive. 120,000 is the average price that you would go for a good rig in order to start your digital experience. So that might be a very, very big barrier for entry. Now, based on all of these things that I mentioned before, I just want to highlight something just so that I can kind of contextualize everything. 2 years ago, I went to the UK with the British Council, and we had sort of a cultural experience there to see like how creative industries are planned out and are moving in the UK. And the one big takeaway that I realized, in particular the digital art field, design, animation, illustration, everything, 3D, is that the Philippines is at least 10 years behind. Now, this is mainly in industry, because when looking at the schools, in particular like LaSalle or iAcademy, their teaching methods are somewhat advanced. They are actually up to date. Their software is up to date, their hardware is up to date. Maybe not the very latest, not the model that came out just yesterday, because that would be very expensive, and I'll touch on that. But it is very, very up to date. It's very competitive. However, the industry is another problem, and the transition portion is very, very difficult, and that's where I come from. So how is it 10 years behind? Commonly in industry, you would find 10-year-old software. When we were working in animation, the software we were using in the studio was 10 years old. The computers that I was using, it was new in 2012, and they're still using it until now. It's 8 years old. Next is that traditional is still regarded as necessary, meaning that if you didn't come from a traditional background, they would probably look down on you, or maybe even challenge you to show that you can do what they do. Another thing is that instead of talking through emails, they would talk to you through pieces of paper. I don't really quite understand why they use pieces of paper that get lost easily, but that's something that needs to be considered. And then next is the digital is easy mindset is still there. Some people are off the mindset that you just press a button and suddenly there's a magic button for everything that generates your entire artwork right away. And lastly, we still, like I said earlier, we still rely on pen and paper for correspondence instead of using like digital methods such as email. Why though? That's a common question I get asked all the time. Well, number one, our industries are severely underpriced. Compared to the US economy and other European economies, we are underpriced. Why? Because of our strategic location and our history with Southeast Asia and the outsourcing industry. We are mostly an outsourced country, so that means that we have to compete with other outsourced industries. So we lower our prices to compete with theirs. Second is that the latest tech is very expensive and very risky. Like I said earlier, LaSalle and iAcademy and UST are all very competitive, but they don't have the model of computer that came out just yesterday, because that's very, very expensive. But the thing is, you don't need to go that expensive. Technology goes down in price really quickly, and I'll touch on that a little bit more later. Again, like I said, a good rig can cost 120,000, and that's really difficult. Next is that tech progresses super fast. What was new 5 years ago is considered old by today's standards. The software I was using 5 years ago is considered obsolete now, and I have to upgrade to the current version of the software. And that's where the difficulty of teaching is, because you have to always keep up to date with the current hardware and the current software. Number four is that some people just don't understand technology, very plain and simple. Some people think that they just should go with what's trending, like Photoshop. You know, they only know what people know. They don't go with what should be done. And on top of that, new software comes out really quick. Sometimes just the day after you introduce one piece of software, a new piece of software comes out, and you have to learn that. Otherwise, it's difficult. And fifth, it's cultural. We always have to address this situation. Earlier, it was mentioned the idea of discarte. Discarte can be a very useful tool if used properly. I rely on discarte a lot to get me through tough situations that I don't know the answer to. However, there is a fine line between discarte and stubbornness. which sometimes we kind of muddy in a way that we relent when it comes to progressing our hardware and our software because we feel that we don't need to. We feel that Descartes can push us forward. Now, so what can we do moving forward? Well, first is we need to work with our limitations. Limitations how? Space, money, manpower, and skills in particular. We have to work with those. We can't force ourselves to be ahead. We have to maintain an equilibrium. How? First is to be up to date, not up to datest. Meaning, work with what software is currently being used. Do not go for what's the very latest piece. Work with something that you are sure works and purchase those. Don't purchase very up-to-date stuff and don't go back. Keep with what is the current important piece of equipment that you have to go with. If it's obsolete, get rid of it. You don't need it. But pick and choose. You have to be smart about it. You can't just say something's obsolete and kick it out. You have to know what you need to upgrade first. And third, you need to understand what the need of the client and the need of the industry is. If you're in teaching, you have to understand your client is the industry sector. You need to understand what is going on in the industry sector. If you're in industry, you have to understand what the client commissioning you is. If it's Disney, you need to know what Disney's needs are and how you can address them while still maintaining that equilibrium between money, manpower, skill, and time. And last is to future-proof plans. An example of this is work-from-home plans. I'll be honest, our industry in terms of animation was not prepared for work-from-home. So they had this very, very big lull of time where they were just transitioning. But if we planned ahead of that, we could have transitioned really quickly. But most importantly, and the point I really want to make here is we have to learn to invest in proper research and development. Because especially when it comes to schools, schools always prepare their students for work. Okay, so that means that the stuff that the student needs to know should be the stuff that goes into industry as well. And in industry, research and development means making things more efficient, cheaper, and easier to produce on a tighter budget. Meaning this could be new software, new hardware, alternatives for expensive software or hardware, stuff like that. So the main takeaway here from that is we have to get out of what we call that comfort zone. We may feel disadvantaged sometimes because we don't know that road we're gonna go through. It's very easy to fall into that comfort zone. But we have to always remember to try and break that. If things are very expensive now and they're not working, we have to find alternatives that are cheaper. We have to admit to ourselves that things are not working. Otherwise, we'll just get left behind. We also need to look at what doesn't work in our individual spaces and work on that. But we have to only address what's necessary and manageable. If you think that it's not necessary to address this situation first because you can still work with it, again, discard it, then don't. But if you see that there's a very, very big detriment to not addressing this right now, don't be so hard-headed and think that Descartes can solve that problem. You have to be honest with yourself and say that you need to solve that now. Now, I just want to leave everyone with these last two thoughts. I live by these thoughts when it comes to my process with work and with my personal work. So professionally, I believe that you should know your limitations and you should never bite off more than you can chew. This is so that you can be efficient and effective. If things are not working, go do what you think will work. Experiment if you have to. Retreat back to what you know will work if you have to, but you have to be very honest with yourself if you cannot do it anymore. But you have to balance that out. Personally, for my personal work, I always remind myself to not be afraid of experimenting with what's available because you never know. Sometimes something will just fall on your lap and that one bit of experimenting you did that one day will help you survive the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mookie. Later, we'll see you join our other panelists for the question and answer portion. Thank you, and thank you for the the wealth of insights that you just gave us and our audience. And I hope that they took down some notes on that. Anyway, we're recording this, so you can our audience can view this again via Facebook Live. I'd now like to move on to our fourth panelist, of course, the last but not the least. He is a multidisciplinary artist, a designer, and an educator. He has exhibited internationally and locally since 1998. He studied painting at the University of the Philippines in Baguio and at the Skowhegan School of Painting and Sculpture in Maine, USA. While studying in the US, he participated in exhibitions held at the Jersey City Museum, the Massachusetts Museum of Contemporary Art, and at the Bronx Museum of the Arts. His works employ different techniques and media where he investigates the complex intersections of art, history, culture, and Filipino diaspora. He received a Master in Fine Arts from Columbia University in New York in 2010. He also received grants and awards from the Skowhegan School of Painting and Sculpture, from the Columbia University, and the Outset Contemporary Award Fund in 2019. His work has been shown in local and international exhibitions, including South by Southeast, Times Museum in Guangzhou in 2016, and Motions of This Kind in London, England in 2019. Jon Cuyson, our panelist, currently lives and works in Manila, where he continues to work on his diverse artistic practice while serving as Dean of the School and Design and Arts, or SODA, at iAcademy. Let us welcome our last but not the least speaker, our panelist, who will speak on virtuality versus reality, strategic improvement for industry partners.
Thank you,
Nandi. You may now take the floor. Hi, Jon.
Hi, thank you. Thank you very much for that. All right, I will close my video for a minute so that I can begin. Can you guys see it?
Yes, it's clear.
We're good? Okay.
We're good.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. Hello. My name is Jon Cuyson, and I'm an artist, a designer, and an educator. I am the Dean of the School of Design and Arts at SODA at iAcademy. This evening, I will be presenting insights and provocations into the complex relationship of the following topics. Education, the digitization of education, and industry partnerships in the post-pandemic future. I will be referring to case studies, analytic data, including personal observations, in an effort to formulate more questions and initiate conversations around the ideas presented. How can technology and strategic industry partnerships in education create a path towards the post-pandemic future? What does the post-pandemic future even mean? This is a question with no real answer, although experts believe that the COVID-19 crisis seemingly provides a sudden glimpse into a future world, one in which digital has become central to every interaction, forcing both organizations and individuals further up the adoption curve almost every night. Experts call this moment the quickening. The quickening. The pandemic is acting as an accelerant, and one of the pandemic's more long-lasting effects could be accelerated digitization. And the data coming in are even more eye-opening. Statistics from global organizations re-emphasize the need of reskilling for the 2030 job market. The OECD estimates that 1.1 billion jobs are liable to be radically transformed by technology in the next decade. And as per the World Economic Forum, nearly half of core skills are set to change by 2022 alone. In 2017, the McKinsey Global Institute estimated as many as 375 million workers, or 14% of the global workforce, would have to switch occupations or acquire new skills by 2030 because of automation and artificial intelligence. So with COVID-19's impact on the business world, the need for reskilling and relearning is now felt strongly from the organizational to individual level. More importantly, what could this prediction mean for educators? right? For education. In times of uncertainty, it's not common for institutions or individuals to search for answers and look for some form of inspiration and guidance. Let me put on my artist and designer hat and share with you my own source of enlightenment. In Buckminster Fuller's book, Critical Path, he details how humanity found itself in its current situation at the limits of the planet's natural resources and facing political, economic, environmental, and ethical crises. The issues he raised in the 1981 book has never been more relevant in our current situation, perhaps too relevant. In the same book, Fuller provides a solution to these issues but specifies that it can only be accomplished through a design science initiative and technological revolution. Buckminster Fuller, who was hailed as one of the greatest minds of our times, was a true game changer. He was renowned for his comprehensive perspectives on the world's problems, and he described his process as an emerging synthesis of an artist, inventor, mechanic, objective economist, and evolutionary strategist. On page 232 of the same book, he offers his belief in the ability of education to be part of the solution. Design, science, education, and technology. These are familiar topics I work with regularly as an educator. But are these sufficient? I would argue that there is still a need to question the traditional educational model before even considering its relationship to technology. By this, I mean, education needs to go beyond transfer and should begin to train the next generation of creative problem solvers using design and technology. A crisis demands boldness and learning. Whether you agree with this statement or not, I believe there is no alternative. But moving boldly doesn't mean moving thoughtlessly, because bold action and the ability to learn are highly interrelated. As the dean of 4 programs at iAcademy, namely film, fashion, animation, and multimedia arts and design, I constantly find means to effectively utilize my experience as an artist and a designer to contribute in reinventing education in order to develop leaders in the advancement of society. This is the mission and vision. In articulating my own vision for SODA, or the School of Design and the Arts, I came up with a proposed conceptual equation backed by creative problem solving, or CPS, methods founded by Alex Osborne. Art plus design plus technology equals solution. Simple. Channeling the spirit of Buckminster Fuller, I believe that the synthesis of these 3 components could reinvigorate the traditional educational methodologies while still problem solving. The need to explore this equation increases. The fact that iAcademy has been at the forefront of technology in the field of computing since 2002 made it an ideal training ground for me to explore my initial ideas. Allow me to share some learnings from previous collaborations with the following case studies. For context and differentiation purposes, industry partners typically collaborate with colleges to fulfill their mutual internship programs and to explore possible projects. This case is an example of one of the projects outside of internship. Case study number 1. The Department of Tourism of the Philippines needed help in promoting one of our heritage sites in Manila. They wanted to increase the engagement of the tourists who visited Intramuros. Through the leadership of the communications head of iAcademy, Raquel Wong, the proposal was to use technology to create experiences in various forms. How the name of the app came about is uncertain, but the innovative tourism application was called Experience Philippines. What does this tourism app actually do? Experience Philippines is an AR, or augmented reality, mobile application that houses multiple visuals specific to the walled city, among others. Once the app is downloaded to the user's phone and the film button is pressed, users will have access to videos of tourist spots in the country filmed and edited by iAcademy multimedia arts and film students. And when users press the AR or Art Tech button and then point the phone to certain spots inside Intramuros, users will experience the architectural history on their phones. So the app and the assets, these were worked on last year by the second-year animation and game development students with the guidance of the faculty of the computing school. Experience Philippines is an ongoing collaborative project between the iAcademy and the DOT. with a shared goal of promoting sustainable tourism with the aid of technology. I thought it was important to identify factors that help determine the success of projects like this within the educational field. Here are 5 of my own observations. I feel that number 1, infrastructure is important. iAcademy is a tech-powered school. It is the first and only Toon Boom Center of Excellence in Asia. This gives students an edge because of the access to industry-level technology. Support system. Without a supportive physical and emotional environment, the risk of failure is imminent. 3, guidance from mentors. Guidance from qualified mentors are absolutely necessary in achieving any project, big or small. And of course, clear purpose. By presenting clearly the purpose of the challenge, work flowed smoothly without question. And commitment. The turnaround time for ideation to execution of some materials may take 1 trimester to even 1 year, hence the need for commitment. When the lockdown began in the Philippines, the iAcademy communications team immediately went to work in collaboration with the DOT again, and the result was Maze. This is case study number 2. Maze is a social distancing app available for web and mobile users to see their current location or choose a location and view the density of an area based on other users' reports. Not only does the app encourage people to observe social distancing during the enhanced community quarantine, but it also instills a mindset to maintain social distancing while engaging the public to actively participate in updating the information within their area. The app went live April and is free to the public to download. In fact, all the case studies that I'm sharing with you this evening were all pro bono. This is part of the advocacy of SODA and iAcademy in using design and technology for good. As educators, the desire to make a difference is innate. I am fortunate to be associated with an institution with fearless game-changing explorers. And it's fair to say that the DOT feels the same when they recognize iAcademy as their first educational partner. As I near the end of my presentation, I revisit my original proposed equation. Could the synthesis of art, design, and technology coupled with industry partnerships be sufficient to reframe education? Similarly, I think industries must begin to question their methods to prepare for the quickening, as the relationship of the workforce and education is intertwined. How can industry partners quicken their responses to the quickening? Experts recommend 4 areas of intervention that can help companies learn quickly during the crisis and the next normal that follows. Number 1, quicken your data reviews. Number 2, focus on technology. Number 3, test and learn. The COVID-19 crisis has made experimentation both a necessity and an expectation. Experiment, learning while scaling. So, like companies, schools are also brands. Brands that rely on the quality of their product or output to promote their institution. In this case, the students. Through collaborative and direct application of their skills in a real world setting, the students who participate in the projects that I showed you claim an increase in confidence in problem-solving situations. So with these collaborative projects in mind, I wonder how schools can become bolder than usual in times of crises. How can educators quicken the training of the future creative problem solvers? What systems can we put in place to expedite knowledge production? Case study number 3 is not similar to the earlier industry partner projects. Allow me to explain. In the middle of the pandemic, as iAcademy began to shift to online learning, my MMA chair, Mario Serrano, and I decided to experiment with 3 classes. With the support of the External Linkages Department head, Biped Datun Ilagan, we asked our industry partner to give our students a creative problem to solve. We asked them. So the shift in dynamics proved better than expected. Students and industry partners and the school were impressed with the output of the experiment with 1 industry partner and 3 classes. But I wanted more. As I continued to think about ways to expedite and expand this process further, beginning next week, as the first semester of virtual learning continues, we have prepared more than one industry partner to directly collaborate with our students. We ask all of them to give us their creative problems. We will create ways to solve them by leveraging our knowledge in art, design, with technology, all virtually. Like Buckminster Fuller, I believe that education has a big role to play in preparing our future leaders for the digital normal. Regardless of the outcome, I consider these initial investigations as our pebble in creating the ripple effect that I think we so desperately need. Thankfully, iAcademy has 200 industry partners to collaborate with. In closing, I offer not an answer, but rather an opportunity for individuals or institutions to take part in questioning and reimagining educational modalities and systems, thereby carving a critical path to a future and perhaps even a culture built by collaborative and technologically empowered creative problem solvers. Thank you.